So we just talked about all the major features. Now we're going to get a little more in depth into how all those features work and get a lot more informative about what's going on. So we talked about how easy the user interface is to use. And really the key thing there is that neutral is detected in the control levers and not in the brake and speed control. By eliminating the brake, usually the brake is up here out of reach, or you may have to use your foot to turn the brake off. You got to have it on to start the engine. We combine both of them. There's a little bit of a two-stage mechanism underneath here. So when you come down to neutral, it engages your brakes. And at the same time, that pushes your control levers up into the neutral range. So as long as this is back, or these are latched in, you can start the engine. But you don't have to have this back to start. As long as your speeds are in neutral, it's safe to start the engine. It's safe to walk away from the machine when the blades are off. So that whole sequence is really easy to work with. Also, compared to some of the other controls in the industry, we've lowered the grips just a little bit. Makes it a little bit easier to get the machine up doing this, but a lot of guys quickly find out with upward facing controls that there's a little bit different technique involved. It's a little more of a hesitation and a pull back than it is a push down with pistol grips. Also, like this whole back end here, it's really important that it doesn't snag on your shirt or your belt buckle. So we've made that really smoothed out the way this transitions. The controls themselves, we know that tension and friction in the controls are bad, and we've done a few things there. So instead of using traditional two-spring mechanism in the RTN, we've gone to a single stage spring with sort of a detent right around neutral. So you can feel definitely when neutral is there, but it doesn't take a lot more to squeeze to go in reverse. Part of that is that we've mounted the control here on a ball bearing, and this linkage runs straight down to the pump arm. There's no secondary mechanisms going on. The speed control is this little cradle here. This is your tracking adjustment. Let me lower the sulky down. So this is your tracking adjustment. Tighter is faster. Back it out, it goes slower. So you can set right, left there. This arm right here is right on the pump trunnion. And so again, being direct, we've reduced that friction. And these springs are pretty soft. And then neutral will look in the front here, behind the engine. You can visualize a little bit what's going on here. See this little cam roller and the switch? So that cam, when it drops in there, this is kind of like a crossbow. When you pull it back, it stays in there real easily, comes out real easily. But you can feel that. You can feel that feedback in the control, but it doesn't make it hard to squeeze. And then the little switch is what tells the electrical system that it's safe to walk away from the machine, because it knows that the pumps are neutral and the machine won't be moving. So that's really what's let us make this a lot easier. Another thing about these control handles is that a lot of times the pivot might be facing this direction or this direction. And what that does is when you squeeze the control, it actually rolls out of your fingers as you squeeze. And so at the end, when you're in reverse, you're trying to squeeze reverse with just your fingertips. Now, by orienting the control this way, this lever actually has a little bit of a sweep to it. So your big fingers are doing more work than your small fingers. And it doesn't rotate in your fingers, so it stays right there. You don't have to re-grip it when it rolls out of your fingertips. So there's a few things there that we believe really made this easier to use. Also, the Confidant engines, they don't take a lot of choke. So once you start up the first time in the morning, this machine's really easy to start, stop, get off, get on. And it's super easy on the hands. Integrated sulky, which we looked at before, also saves a lot of time and effort. Compared to the pistol grip, you're a little bit further back. So when you press this, it doesn't really get near your feet. So it's really easy to use. Another nice thing about this is that you have some visibility through here. On the gear drive, you can see the gear selector from standing back here. On the hydro, you can actually see where your feet go. And that's enhancing your ability to see everything. So when we developed this, we put a lot of commonality into the product line. And so all the hydros and the gear drive have the same tractor width, this width right here. And it's let us standardize a lot of different things. We moved the hydro tank out, we put a protector plate behind it, integrated filter housing, battery sits out here. And all our front frames mount to this surface the same width. So there's all this commonality. The big difference between the large frame and the small frame walk behind is this subframe right here. We have a big structural piece that passes underneath the machine. And the deck is actually bolted to this undercarriage. When you get into the mid-frame walk behinds, There's a lighter setup that's more proportional to the machine's size and the difference in wheel diameter. The axle's mounted a little bit differently. So this lets us balance the machine. The 52 and 61 should have the wheel axle a lot farther forwards, so you have more leverage in the back. And the engine is also counterbalancing a little further back. 61 is mounted in this outer hole, and a 52 is mounted in this inner hole. So that's giving you the best configuration, best balance, and offsets that you need. Now when you get into the mid frame, or the large frame has the same engine deck as say a 32. On a large frame, this engine deck is really just hanging on for the ride because this structural integration of the subframe with the front frame. Coming around front, we have a pretty standard setup with the height pins here. We have a really long range, so really not much limitation there. The 52 and the 61 both have the 2-belt system, so there's no tight side, backside idlers. That's worked out quite well. We have the same front tires as we have on the standard Intensity, which have the shielded setup here. So these bearings are sealed and they don't have to be greased all the time, so that eliminates yet another service point. We have the sealed front housings here. Again, that lets us eliminate all those service points. It comes down on this machine to really just being blades and engine oil. Everything else, we've got sealed ball bearings or sealed rod ends. There's really nothing that you have to worry a lot about every day. So if the machine is neglected, it's not going to really be compromised or fall apart. Eliminating that maintenance point, those maintenance points we've really found is intriguing to a lot of commercial cutters because they have a real hard time scheduling that routine maintenance. And sometimes it has a little loss in performance, but if it means that that maintenance is not done and the machine destroys itself, that's pretty bad. So they really like this idea that routine maintenance is not as critical. The engine oil obviously has to be done, get the most out of your engine, but for the rest of the machine, we're trying to eliminate as much of that as we possibly can. So we'll look at the mid-frame and show you what some of the differences there are. So the mid-frame walk-behind is a little bit different from the large frame. It doesn't have the major subframe underneath. The wheel motor support's mounted right to the side of the tractor body. And the difference between a 48 and a 36 is this rear hole right here. So we build a 36, we move the wheel back, and what that does is it makes so our handle overhang is a little bit less because you don't need that on a 36. You can make a tighter inside corner. It also shifts the engine forward a tiny bit to help balance the machine. So when we build a 36, we don't add any extra weight to the front end of it to balance it. Also the wheel position, the hub, is a little bit different between a 36 and a 48. So the 36 has a little bit tighter width to it. This 16-inch tire is really ideal for a 48 or a 36 because it has a wide shoulder to it, so you don't have any rutting going on. And a larger wheel diameter, what that does is it moves your axle further from the cutter deck. So when you go around a tree with a larger wheel, so if you use an integrated transmission, you usually have to use an 18-inch tire. Usually they're really narrow then. You can fit it in between the transmission. That larger wheel means your axle is really far from the cutter deck. When you go around a tree, the deck actually swings further out from the tree and you miss cutting close to the tree. So this 16-inch tire, the offset, it's ideally positioned and scaled for those trimming areas. On the mid-frame, you also have the cutter deck and the wheel motor independently mounted to the tractor frame, unlike the large frame. The front wheel here, this is a cage roller bearing setup with bushings in the front. Now, with the mid-frame, if you want to cut really short, like an inch, you can do that. And the best way to do that is to change the shims here. And there's another setting, the rear wheel motor support, so you can lower the whole frame, keep your belts level if you're going to cut really short, for example, Bermuda grass. Otherwise, you just use your height pins for all your average conditions. Also, this walk-behind is our first machine where we've updated the labeling standard to be language neutral. So you'll see a lot more pictograms on this product line. So we know that balance is really important with the walk-behind, and we've chosen to use a floating frame on everything except for the 32-inch models. And so we really put a lot of attention into what that balance feels like, and each individual machine is balanced specifically for that cutter deck. Let me walk you through what that feels like with each machine. Starting with the 61, this is going to be the heaviest machine. Going up the hill, you don't want it to be too light. So I don't think I could get this up very well without the engine running. With the engine running, it's really easy. But, what you do, get down. We also have the 52. So very similar configuration to the smaller deck. So this is just a slight bit lighter. Put it up, no problem. Keep it up. Here we have the 48, which is pretty light. This one I don't even really need to get it to run. Comes right up, running again. Super easy to get it to go. 36, also pretty light. Right up. It's actually the 36, just the way it's built. You tilt it back. You could actually service it, or sitting on a little bit of an edge, you can easily clean out the deck without having to, mess with something like that. Gear drive, 48, and it's pretty light. Put right up. The 36, same thing here. All that's through configuring the axle and wheel position on each machine, using the engine and the length of the handlebars as the ballast and control over balancing each machine. So the gear drive has a lot of similarities with the Hydro walk-behinds. The handlebar assembly is almost identical. The console assembly, the control handle position, it's all the same. We don't have the speed control here, obviously. We still have the isolation. But in here, the linkage runs straight down to the idler pulley instead of to the hydro pump. And what we've done here is we've put the neutral detect switch right behind this idler arm here. So as long as your brakes are in, you're able to start the engine, or you can walk away from the machine. Also the guard here, it's a two-piece assembly. You take off the outer guard, there's a little inner plate that has multiple adjustments for the spring tension. So if you want really tight belt traction, you can put the spring in a tighter position. If you want really easy on the hands, you can set it there. There's also several hole adjustments in the back of this plate so that you can have more distance between your brake and engagement. That's all configurable. The axle position is adjustable, high or low, in addition to the height adjustment pins on the deck. So if you're going to cut really low and you want your belts to not have much angle to them, you can reset the whole frame to match those conditions. It has a 36-inch aero core deck, so it has this tapered surface. So the air column that's spinning here, it expands as it comes through this area and creates a ton of vacuum. We have the front tapered edge here, so when grass goes under here, it gets caught in and pulled in. So we've got a clean, crisp cut across the side here. Again, we have the 9.5-inch flat free tires. The 36 and 48, they actually have different axle subframe weldments, and on the other side, the deck is real close to the tire. And what we do on a 48 is the axle actually sits a little further forwards, so you have more mechanical advantage with the handlebars, and the engine's positioned a little bit further back. On the 36, the machine's more compact, and the engine's counterbalancing better for having a lighter deck. So each machine really has an ideal balance without adding that ballast to the front. When you add the ballast to the front of a walk-behind, it makes it slow to turn, or the wheels will slip in order to turn. And with a walk-behind, usually the focus is on either hills or really having a light tread on the ground. If you have that weight out front, you're going to be back to a situation where your wheels will be scuffing in order to make those turns. So individually balancing each machine is important to have that performance that commercial guys are looking for. So that's a quick overview of some of the detailed specs and features in the walk-behind. We'll look at the operator's position here for a second. So the gear selector, you can shift it with your knee if you need to. It has reverse, assist, neutral, go up to third, and you actually detent down to go into fourth and fifth. So without looking, you can easily just jump to third, go up to fifth. And then from the operator's position, you can see which gear you're in quite easily. By using the same control system between the gears and hydros, it makes it very easy for somebody who has a need for both gears and hydros in their fleet to switch between them. There isn't sort of that training curve. It's real easy. Or if you've been running the gear drive for a while, it makes transitioning to hydro really a seamless transition. So we're really looking for that in this line of walk-behinds. The Kohler engines We've offered these. They have a 3-year warranty, which is really good. The air cleaner, canister type air cleaner. It's pretty important for a front engine mounted mower, because that dust and debris from making your turn and driving into your path of dust, you can just get so much dirt ingestion up front. So that's a big reason why we've chosen to use the Confidant engine. We've been very happy with it. It's really a very overkill engine. The engine block's capable in the EFI setup of 28.5 horsepower, and here we are offering it even down to a 32-inch machine. So the engine barely works out a sweat, and we get a lot of durability and life from the engine just from that alone. So we've offered the Confidant across the whole range. The gear drives don't come in electric start. Really, the electric start pushes the gear drive out of its price envelope. The Hydros, mid-frames, they're all electric start from 32 up to 48. So that's a walkthrough of what the differences between the different walk-behinds are, some of the features, what's going on there.